Today, we're talking about a tragedy in Ghana, a stadium stampede that really wasn't just an accident. No, it's a huge warning sign about a nation's future, and it's a story that reveals a crisis that's been hiding in plain sight.
It all starts with this one devastatingly simple fact. 6 young lives were lost on this day. But how they died? Well, that's a story that you really need to hear.
And here's the absolute heart of the tragedy. These young people weren't casualties of war, lost serving their country. They were casualties of hope, lost while simply trying to get a chance to serve.
So that's the question we've got to answer. What forces came together on that day to turn aspiration into an absolute disaster? As you're about to see, the answer has almost nothing to do with something as simple as crowd control.
Okay, so first, let's just break down exactly what happened that day at the Elwak Sports Stadium.
You know, this quote from the news reports at the time really captures the shock everyone felt. At first, the story was just a rumor, the kind of thing that's just too grim to be true. But by the end of the day, the horrific reality had been confirmed.
Just think about that number. 6. 6 young people woke up that morning dreaming of serving their country. And they never came home.
So what actually happened? Well, it was a stampede. A completely chaotic, desperate surge of applicants that it completely overwhelmed all the security they had in place.
And the total human cost, it was just staggering. On top of the 6 who died, you had 5 others left fighting for their lives in intensive care. In total, the Deputy Minister for Defense reported 34 casualties. It was a scene of absolute chaos and tragedy.
Okay, so that's what happened. But now we have to shift to the why. Because really, the stampede itself isn't the whole story, not even close. The real story is about why so many people were there to begin with.
And this is the number that changes everything. Over 21,000 people. That's how many showed up to this one recruitment center in Accra. Just let that sink in for a second. 21,000.
So the initial, official statement from the Ghana Armed Forces blamed a breach of security by what they called an unexpected crowd. But was it really that unexpected?
And that is the real question, isn't it? The cause of the stampede wasn't just a physical surge of bodies. It was a surge of pure desperation. What on earth could drive that many young people to one place for just a handful of jobs?
Well, the answer to that question, it pulls back the curtain on a crisis that's been simmering just beneath the surface of Ghanaian society for a long time. Crippling, widespread unemployment.
And here's the number behind it all. 60%. A 60% youth unemployment rate. So, you see, that wasn't just a crowd. It was the physical embodiment of a national economic failure. These weren't just applicants. They were people who felt like they had no other options.
And you have to look at who was actually in that crowd. Commentators at the time were pointing out that you had highly qualified people, folks with university degrees who would normally be applying to become officers. They were so desperate for any kind of work that they were going for these entry-level recruit positions.
This contrast right here, it just reveals this huge shift in the country. An analyst remembered his professor telling a story that decades ago, his own mother cried when he thought about joining the military. She called it a death sentence. But today, with so few jobs out there, that very same military career is seen as a last hope for survival, a last hope for dignity.
So, you see, when you have this level of desperation, it stops being just an economic problem. It becomes a grave security risk for the entire nation.
Yeah, just think about the mindset here for a second. You've got this huge population of young, able-bodied people, and they are so desperate for a future that they are literally willing to risk their lives just for a chance at a job.
And that desperation presents a profound danger. Because if the state can't give you an opportunity, but someone else can, whether it's a political group, a terrorist cell, a criminal organization, where does your loyalty go? This level of desperation creates a population that's just ripe for exploitation.
The warning could not be clearer. One analyst pointed to a report that found some Ghanaians might even support an illegal uprising, and he called this a real and present danger that could literally disrupt our democracy. The Elwak tragedy wasn't a failure of crowd control. It was a giant flashing red light for the whole nation.
So where did this all come from? How did things get this bad? Well, the sources we looked at point to a deep, systemic failure of leadership and national priorities that's been going on for decades.
One commentator in particular painted this devastatingly clear picture of the failure. He talked about a time when Ghana actually had a thriving industrial sector, with factories making everything from glass to clothing. But those factories, they were systematically shut down.
And what did we build in their place? Churches. He said, we live in a country where we literally shut down the places that provided real jobs, only to build churches on that same land where we now have to go and pray for employment. The irony is just, it's as stark as it is tragic.
So in the end, it's just so clear that the stampede at Wak Stadium wasn't some random, isolated accident. It was a symptom of a much deeper illness in the country, a crisis of joblessness, desperation, and hopelessness. It was a warning. And the only question left now is anyone with the power to actually change things listening?